The gunshot echoed through the saloon, silencing every patron and sending a chill down Josephine Gentry's spine as she dropped to the dusty floorboards, her serving tray clattering beside her. It wasn't the first time violence had erupted in Copper Creek, but the familiar terror never lessened, especially for a woman who'd spent her life being reminded she wasn't worth protecting. The year was 1875, and the Arizona Territory was as unforgiving as the men who sought to tame it. Josephine Josie, to the few who bothered with pleasantries, had arrived in Copper Creek 3 months prior, another stop in a lifetime of drifting from one mining town to the next, searching for something she couldn't name. Everybody stay calm. The shooter, a red-faced miner with liquor courage, waved his pistol wildly. "This is between me and Sullivan." Josie's gaze darted to the tall figure standing calmly at the bar, seemingly unperturbed by the gun aimed in his direction. Samuel Zachary hadn't flinched when the first shot pierced the mirror behind him, showering glass across the counter. The cowboy simply sipped his whiskey, his steely blue eyes fixed on his would-be killer. "You've had enough to drink, Harker," Sam said, his voice carrying easily through the tense silence. "Put the gun down before you do something you'll regret even more than that mining claim you lost." The miner's hand trembled. "You cheated me. I paid fair market value." "You were the one too drunk to count." Sam set his glass down and turned fully toward the man. "Now you're frightening the lady." Josie realized with a start that Sam was looking at her, crouched on the floor in her faded blue dress, auburn hair tumbling from its pins. Their eyes met for a heartbeat before the miner fired again, the bullet splintering the bar inches from Sam's hand. What happened next occurred so quickly Josie barely registered the movement. Sam drew his revolver and fired a single shot that knocked the gun from the miner's hand. 2 patrons tackled the howling man before he could recover. "Sheriff's coming," someone called from the doorway. The saloon erupted in activity as men returned to their drinks and card games, disaster averted. Josie scrambled to collect the glasses that had fallen from her tray, hands shaking violently. "Allow me, miss." A pair of worn leather boots appeared beside her, and Sam Zachary knelt down, gathering the unbroken glassware. When their fingers brushed, Josie flinched. Men offering help always expected something in return. She'd learned that lesson painfully over 23 years of life. "Thank you, but I can manage," she murmured, not meeting his eyes. "I've no doubt you can." There was something in his tone that made her look up. No pity, no leering, just a straightforward gaze that assessed without judgment. But a gentleman helps a lady in distress regardless. There aren't many gentlemen in Copper Creek, Mr. Zachary. Josie stood with her reloaded tray, smoothing her apron with her free hand. A slight smile touched his weathered face. "Samuel Zachary at your service, miss." "Josephine Gentry, though most just call me girl or you there." The bitter words slipped out before she could stop them. "Well, Miss Gentry, I believe that's a shame." He tipped his hat and returned to the bar as Sheriff Donovan entered to haul away the disarmed miner. That night, after the saloon closed and Josie swept the floors, she walked the short distance to her rented room above the dressmaker's shop. The cool desert air offered relief from the smoke-filled saloon, but little comfort from her thoughts. She'd noticed Sam Zachary watching her throughout the evening, not with the hungry eyes she was accustomed to, but with curious interest that unsettled her more than lewd propositions. Men like him, respected ranchers with land and means, didn't look twice at women like her, except for one reason. And Josie had sworn never to be that desperate again, not after escaping the last man who claimed to be her protector but proved to be her jailer. Dawn broke early over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant strokes of orange and purple. Josie was already awake, mending a tear in her second dress. Working at Maddie's saloon paid enough for food and lodging, but little else. She'd learned to make do with what she had, a skill acquired from a childhood spent in various orphanages and foster homes after her mother died, and her father abandoned her to pursue gold in California. The town was beginning to stir when Josie headed to the general store to purchase thread. Copper Creek had grown considerably since the copper mine opened 5 years prior, boasting a hotel, 2 saloons, a bank, and various other establishments that served the miners and ranchers in the area. "Good morning, Miss Gentry." The deep voice startled her as she exited the store. Sam Zachary stood beside a magnificent chestnut horse, his tall frame casting a long shadow in the morning light. Today, he wore a clean white shirt under his leather vest, and his dark hair was neatly combed beneath his Stetson. "Mr. Zachary," she acknowledged with a cautious nod. "I was hoping to speak with you." He shifted, revealing a nervousness that seemed at odds with the confident man who'd faced down a gunman the night before. "I require assistance at my ranch, and Mrs. Torres at the hotel mentioned you might be looking for different employment." Josie's back stiffened. "What sort of assistance are you referring to, sir?" Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by a flush that colored his tanned cheeks. "A housekeeper, Miss Gentry, nothing improper." "My sister has been managing the house, but she's returning east next week to care for our ailing aunt. I need someone to cook and keep things in order." "And why ask me? I'm sure there are plenty of respectable women in town better suited." "Because you have intelligent eyes that miss nothing," he answered frankly. "And because Mrs. Torres said you work harder than anyone she's ever met." He paused. "The position pays $15 a month with room and board included. It's a quiet place, 10 miles outside town." $15 was nearly double what she earned at the saloon, and without the constant fear of wandering hands and drunken propositions. Still, isolation with a man she barely knew carried its own dangers. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Zachary, but I must decline." Something like disappointment flickered across his face, but he nodded respectfully. "The offer remains open should you reconsider. Good day, Miss Gentry." Josie watched him mount his horse and ride away, trying to ignore the small voice, wondering if she'd just made a terrible mistake. That evening, the saloon was busier than usual. A cattle drive had passed nearby, bringing cowboys flush with pay and eager to spend it on whiskey and women. Josie moved efficiently between tables, avoiding grabbing hands and ignoring crude comments. She'd grown skilled at becoming nearly invisible, a defense mechanism that had served her well. "There's my pretty girl," the slurred voice sent ice through her veins. Wallace Briggs, the saloon owner's brother, had arrived from Tucson, and his gaze followed her like a predator. He'd made his intentions clear during his last visit, cornering her in the storeroom with promises that he could take care of her if she was nice to him. "Mr. Briggs," she acknowledged tersely, moving to serve another table. His hand caught her arm. "Don't be unfriendly now." "I've been thinking about you since last time. Please release me, sir. I have work to do." His grip tightened. "My brother owns this place. Your work is whatever I say it is. The lady asked you to release her." Samuel Zachary's voice cut through the noise of the saloon. He stood a few feet away, his posture relaxed but his eyes hard as steel. Briggs sneered. "This is none of your business, Zachary. This establishment belongs to my family." "And Miss Gentry belongs to herself," Sam replied evenly. "Let her go." For a tense moment, Josie thought Briggs might refuse. Then, with a dismissive grunt, he released her arm and turned back to his drink. "Didn't realize she had a protector. You can have her when I'm finished." Sam's hand moved to his holster, but Josie stepped between them. "It's not worth it," she whispered urgently. "He'll be gone in a few days." The rest of the evening passed without incident, though Briggs's calculating gaze followed her constantly. When she finally finished her shift, Sam was waiting by the door. "I'll walk you home," he said simply. "That's not necessary. Briggs is still drinking and he's angry. I'd feel better knowing you reached your lodging safely." Too tired to argue, Josie nodded. They walked in silence through the quiet streets, the moon illuminating their path. When they reached the dressmaker's shop, Josie paused at the side stairs that led to her room. "Thank you for your intervention tonight," she said formally. Sam studied her in the moonlight. "Has he bothered you before?" Men like him are everywhere, Mr. Zachary. I've learned to handle them. You shouldn't have to. His voice was soft but firm. My offer still stands. The ranch is far from men like Briggs. Josie hesitated. The thought of escaping Briggs's unwanted attention was tempting, but experience had taught her caution. How do I know you're any different? You don't, he admitted. But I give you my word as a gentleman that you'll be treated with respect. The housekeeper's quarters are separate from the main house. You'd have privacy and security. Josie's mind raced, weighing her options. Stay and face Briggs's escalating harassment, or risk trusting this man who'd shown her nothing but courtesy. I'll consider it, she said finally. Sam nodded, seemingly satisfied. I'll be in town until noon tomorrow. If you decide to accept, I'll be at the mercantile purchasing supplies. After he departed, Josie climbed the stairs to her sparse room, her thoughts in turmoil. She'd spent her life being passed from one unwanted situation to another, never staying long enough to form attachments. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Yet something about Samuel Zachary's steady gaze and quiet strength made her wonder if perhaps, just this once, the risk might be worth taking. Morning arrived with no clear answer. But when Josie descended to begin her day, she found Wallace Briggs waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Good morning, sweetheart. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I thought we could continue our conversation from last night without interruptions. Josie's heart hammered in her chest. I need to get to work, Mr. Briggs. I spoke with my brother. He's given you the day off. Briggs moved closer, blocking her path. I've taken a room at the hotel, very private. I'm not interested, Josie said firmly, fighting to keep her voice steady. His smile vanished. It wasn't a request. My brother values his business and I can make things very difficult for you. His hand wrapped around her wrist. Or very pleasant if you're smart. Remove your hand or I'll scream loud enough to wake the entire town, Josie threatened, though she knew few would intervene on behalf of a saloon girl. Briggs laughed. Go ahead. Who do you think they'll believe? A respectable businessman or a nobody drifter? The truth of his words stung like a physical blow. In the eyes of society, she was disposable, unwanted, a truth hammered into her since childhood. Let her go, Briggs. Sam Zachary's voice was deadly quiet as he appeared at the bottom of the street, revolver at his side. Briggs released her with a curse. You're making a powerful enemy, Zachary. Wouldn't be the first time. Sam's expression remained impassive. Miss Gentry, I believe we had an appointment at the mercantile to discuss employment. Grateful for the lifeline, Josie nodded and hurried to his side. Briggs watched them with narrowed eyes but made no move to follow as they walked toward the center of town. How did you know? Josie asked when they were safely away. I didn't, Sam admitted. I was coming to see if you'd made a decision about the position. Fortunate timing. They reached the mercantile, and Sam guided her to a quiet corner where they could speak privately. I understand if you need more time to consider, I accept, Josie interrupted, decision crystallizing in that moment. When can I start? Relief softened Sam's features. Today, if you're able, I can wait while you gather your belongings. An hour later, Josie sat beside Sam in his wagon, her few possessions packed in a single trunk. They left Copper Creek behind, following a well-traveled road that wound through saguaro-dotted hills and rocky ravines. The landscape opened up as they traveled, revealing vast grasslands suitable for cattle ranching. There it is, Sam said eventually, pointing to a sprawling ranch house nestled against the foothills. The rocking Z, Josie's eyes widened at the sight. The main house was larger than she'd expected, a handsome two-story structure with a wide porch and several outbuildings nearby. A corral held horses, and in the distance, cattle grazed on the rolling terrain. It's beautiful, she breathed. Been in my family since '52. My father built it from nothing. Pride colored his voice. My sister and I have kept it going since he passed 5 years ago. As they approached, a slender woman emerged onto the porch. Sarah Zachary was the feminine version of her brother, with the same dark hair and blue eyes, though her expression held more warmth. "You must be Miss Gentry," she greeted as Sam helped Josie down from the wagon. "Samuel mentioned he was hoping to convince you to join us." "I'm so pleased you accepted." "Thank you for the opportunity, Miss Zachary. Sarah, please, we don't stand on formality here." She linked her arm through Josie's. "Come inside and I'll show you around before supper. Samuel can bring your trunk." The interior of the ranch house was comfortable without being ostentatious. Solid furniture, clean floors, and windows that let in plenty of light created a welcoming atmosphere. Sarah showed her the kitchen, dining room, and sitting area before leading her upstairs. "This will be your room," she said, opening a door to reveal a pleasant chamber with a bed, dresser, washstand, and small writing desk. The housekeeper's quarters are traditionally in a separate building, but Samuel insisted you have a proper room in the house. Josie glanced at her in surprise. "He did," Sarah's smile was knowing. "My brother may seem stoic, but he has a kind heart. He was quite concerned about your safety in town." After the tour, Sarah showed Josie the kitchen duties and explained the general household routine. "I leave in 3 days," she said as they prepared supper. "But that should give us enough time to go over everything." That evening, they dined together, the conversation flowing more easily than Josie expected. Samuel and Sarah shared stories of growing up on the ranch, and for the first time in years, Josie found herself laughing genuinely. When Sam excused himself to check on a pregnant mare in the stable, Sarah turned to Josie with gentle curiosity. "Samuel mentioned you've had a difficult time. If you don't mind my asking, how did you come to be in Copper Creek?" Josie hesitated, unused to sharing her past. "I've moved around a lot. My mother died when I was young and my father left for the goldfields. I grew up in orphanages until I was old enough to work. Copper Creek is just the latest stop." Sarah's eyes softened with compassion rather than pity. "Well, I hope you'll find something worth staying for here. Samuel could use someone to look after him when I'm gone." "I'm just the housekeeper," Josie clarified quickly. "Of course," Sarah agreed, though her smile suggested she thought otherwise. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity as Josie learned the household routines and Sarah prepared for her journey east. Samuel was often absent during daylight hours, tending to ranch business, but joined them for meals. Josie noticed how his gaze lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking, but true to his word, he maintained a respectful distance. On Sarah's final evening, after supper had been cleared and Samuel had retired to his study, the two women sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson. "I'm leaving my brother in good hands," Sarah said, breaking the comfortable silence. "He thinks highly of you." Josie felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He's been very kind. Samuel doesn't let many people close, not since Mary died." Mary, his wife. Sarah's expression turned somber. "They were married only a year when influenza took her back in '69. He hasn't shown interest in anyone since." She patted Josie's hand. "Until now." "I'm sure you're mistaken," Josie protested, even as her heart quickened at the thought. "Mr. Zachary needs a housekeeper, nothing more." Sarah's knowing smile returned. "If you say so, my dear." The following morning, Sarah departed for Tucson, where she would catch the train east. Josie found herself alone with Samuel for the first time, acutely aware of his presence as they moved through their daily routines. He left after breakfast to work with the ranch hands, and Josie busied herself with household tasks, determined to prove her worth. Days turned into weeks, and gradually Josie settled into life at the Rocking Z. The fear that had been her constant companion began to fade, replaced by a tentative sense of security. Samuel remained unfailingly polite, joining her for meals but otherwise giving her space. In the evenings, they sometimes sat together in the parlor, Samuel reading the newspaper while Josie mended clothing or worked on embroidery Sarah had left behind. One evening in late October, as autumn painted the landscape in muted golds and browns, a fierce storm rolled in from the mountains. Wind howled around the eaves and rain lashed against the windows with unusual ferocity. "Creek might flood if this keeps up," Samuel remarked as they sat at the dining table. "I should check on the horses. In this weather," Josie looked up from her stew with concern. "Can't it wait until morning? Some of the younger ones get spooked by storms. Won't take long." He rose and reached for his oilskin coat hanging by the door. "Be careful," Josie said, surprising herself with the depth of worry in her voice. Samuel paused, studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I will." After he left, Josie cleared the table and washed the dishes, trying to ignore the increasingly violent storm. When an hour passed with no sign of Samuel, anxiety gnawed at her. Gathering her courage, she donned a shawl and lit a lantern, venturing onto the porch to scan the yard. Rain immediately soaked her as she peered into the darkness, the lantern's glow barely penetrating the downpour. The stable door was open, swinging violently in the wind. Heart racing, Josie descended the porch steps and made her way across the muddy yard. "Samuel," she called as she entered the stable. The horses nickered nervously in their stalls, but there was no response from their master. Then she saw him, lying motionless on the straw-covered floor, a wooden beam fallen beside him. "Samuel!" Josie rushed to his side, setting the lantern down. Blood matted his hair where the beam had struck him, but he was breathing. "Samuel, can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered, then opened. "Josie," he murmured, confusion clouding his gaze. "Don't move, you've been hurt." She examined the wound, relieved to find it wasn't as severe as she'd feared. "Can you stand if I help you?" With effort, she managed to get him to his feet. He leaned heavily against her as they made their slow way back to the house, rain plastering their clothing to their bodies. By the time they reached the porch, Samuel was more alert but shivering violently. "We need to get you warm and dry," Josie said, guiding him to the sitting room where embers still glowed in the fireplace. She helped him to the sofa and quickly built up the fire before fetching towels and a basin of warm water. "You're going to catch your death," Samuel protested weakly as she began cleaning the wound on his temple. "Hush," she commanded, focused on her task. "You could have been killed out there." "Would that have mattered to you?" The quiet question caught her off guard, and she met his steady gaze. "Of course it would," she answered, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire. His hand caught hers, stilling her movements. "Why?" Josie's heart hammered in her chest. The vulnerability in his eyes mirrored her own, breaking down walls she'd constructed over years of rejection and disappointment. "Because you matter to me," she admitted, the truth of it both terrifying and liberating. "Josie." Her name was a caress on his lips. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he drew her closer until their foreheads touched. "May I kiss you?" Her answer was to close the distance herself, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that began tentatively but quickly deepened as years of loneliness melted away in the warmth of shared desire. When they finally separated, both breathless, Samuel cupped her face in his calloused hands. "I've wanted to do that since the first moment I saw you in that saloon," he confessed. "Why didn't you?" "Because you looked at me with such distrust. I knew you needed time, needed to see that not all men want to take from you." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I wanted to earn your trust first." Josie's eyes filled with unexpected tears. "No one has ever put my needs before their own." "Then they were fools." His expression grew serious. "Josie, I know you've been hurt. I know life has taught you that you're unwanted. But if you'll let me, I'll spend every day showing you how precious you are to me." The words touched something deep within her, a wound that had never properly healed. "I was born to be unwanted," she cried, tears spilling down her cheeks as a lifetime of rejection washed over her. "No one has ever truly wanted me, not my father, not the families who took me in, no one." Samuel gathered her into his arms, holding her as she wept. "You were born to be loved by me," he whispered fiercely into her hair. "I've been waiting for you my whole life, Josephine Gentry, even when I didn't know it." In the shelter of his embrace, Josie allowed herself to believe that perhaps he was right, that the journey that had brought her to Copper Creek, to this man and this moment, had been leading her home all along. The days that followed brought a tentative courtship. Samuel respected her need for caution, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. They shared meals and conversation, rode together across the ranch lands, and in the evenings sat closer on the sofa than propriety might dictate. Each small gesture of affection, a touch of hands, a stolen kiss, a lingering embrace helped heal the scars left by years of rejection. In late November, Samuel took Josie to a secluded meadow high in the foothills, where a picnic awaited them beneath an ancient oak tree. As they finished their meal, he took her hand in his. "I have something to ask you," he said, a nervous edge to his voice she'd never heard before. "I know it hasn't been long, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl. "This was my mother's," he explained. "She made me promise to give it only to the woman who captured my heart completely." Josie's breath caught as he knelt before her. "Josephine Gentry, I love you with every fiber of my being. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears blurred her vision as she looked into the face of the man who had shown her what it meant to be truly valued. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes." Samuel slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that promised a lifetime of the love she'd always been denied. They were married on Christmas Day in the small church in Copper Creek, with the entire town in attendance. Wallace Briggs had long since departed, and the saloon owner offered sincere congratulations, admitting he'd never seen Josie look so radiant. As snow dusted the desert for the first time in years, Samuel and Josie Zachary returned to the Rocking Z to begin their life together. That night, as they lay entwined in the master bedroom that was now theirs to share, Josie marveled at the journey that had brought her here. "What are you thinking?" Samuel asked, tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "That I never imagined happiness could feel like this." She raised herself on one elbow to look into his eyes. "Thank you for seeing something in me worth loving when I couldn't see it myself." "I'll remind you every day if needed," he promised, pulling her close. "You were born to be loved, Josie, and I was born to love you." As spring bloomed across the desert the following year, Josie shared news that brought tears of joy to Samuel's eyes. They were expecting a child. In September of 1877, they welcomed a daughter, naming her Hope for the future they had found in each other's arms. And on quiet evenings, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset with their daughter between them, Josie would look at the life they had built together and marvel at how a chance encounter in a dusty saloon had led her to the one person who could teach her that she had never been unwanted at all, merely waiting to be found by the heart that had always been searching for hers.